A 15-year-old boy recalls the fateful moment he first encountered a mysterious girl. The boy stares in stunned silence, his gaze fixed on a figure that compels him to ask who she is. A hand tentatively reaches out to grasp a piece of fabric as a voice stutters in surprise. Before him stands a fragile, fairy-like girl with translucent skin and slender limbs, greeting the young duke with a gentle smile. In that instant, the boy is completely captivated, falling head over heels for the girl he dubs the Lace Angel. The scene shifts to a group of boys expressing their blatant dislike and resentment toward an unnamed peer. Cruel insults fly as the boys mock his illegitimate status, claiming he ranks lower than a commoner despite being the king's child. The verbal abuse intensifies with the boys heartlessly dehumanizing illegitimate children, comparing them to dogs or pigs. Hurt by the depth of their hatred, the boy reflects on his social blunders and the alienation he feels. He reveals that the gathering was intended to help him bond with peers his own age. Instead of making friends, his effortless victories in fencing and riding made it look like he was merely showing off. Clutching a basket of cookies his nurse baked, the boy lacks the courage to return to the group after making them feel inferior. He reflects on the harsh religious and social dogma stating that children born out of wedlock should not exist. Though the king dotes on him and predicts he will be a great ruler, the boy remains a social exception that others find difficult to treat. He admits to himself that he is likely poorly suited for social interaction. Raised in a secluded forest villa to protect him from harm, his world has been limited to only a handful of people. His life changed abruptly when the king ordered him to become the adopted son of the Duke of Bedford. Leaving his forest sanctuary behind, he traveled to the royal capital to begin his new life. He realizes the gathering was a forced arrangement born of his foster father's pity for his isolation. The king had personally issued a grand invitation to over 50 children to keep him company. Feeling like a burden, he decides to slip away from the party, hoping no one will notice his absence. The boy stands alone by a large door, preparing to retreat further into the quiet halls. Suddenly, he catches sight of something through a doorway that stops him in his tracks. He spots a girl hunched over a piano and once again wonders about her identity. His eyes soften as he observes her from a distance, mesmerized by her presence. The two exchange a formal greeting, their eyes meeting in a moment of quiet recognition. Startled, the girl apologizes for trespassing, asking if she has entered an off-limits area. The boy quickly reassures her that guests are free to enter and that her presence is perfectly fine. She confesses that she was drawn into the room because the lace laid over the piano was so beautiful she had to see it up close. The boy explains that the intricate lace was actually crocheted by his foster father's late wife. The girl expresses her genuine amazement at the quality of the work. She shares that while her own mother loves making lacework, she lacks this level of incredible skill. When asked if she enjoys making lace herself, she sadly admits she is utterly hopeless and clumsy at it. Despite her lack of skill, she speaks passionately about her love for delicate, intricate, and elegant patterns. Her face lights up as she describes how she could gaze at such beautiful patterns forever. The boy agrees with her, his eyes reflecting a newfound appreciation for the beauty she describes. He questions why his agreement makes her so happy, and she responds with a cheerful laugh. She explains that sharing the feeling of finding something beautiful with someone else is a lovely thing. The boy realizes this is the empathy his psychology tutor had once described. The girl curiously asks the young duke if he has ever shared his feelings with anyone before. He admits that he rarely has the chance to talk to people so casually or openly. She tells him that it is a shame he hasn't experienced such a connection. The boy contemplates her words, beginning to see the value in her perspective. She describes how having someone understand your feelings is wonderful and provides a sense of safety. He muses that while joy and peace of mind sound wonderful, such things might be difficult for him to achieve. When he suggests that his nature makes people dislike him, the girl firmly disagrees. The boy looks on in surprise, taken aback by her sudden and passionate defense. She reassures him that people don't actually hate him, they just don't know the real him yet. She explains that people often fear or misunderstand what they don't know, but her conviction stays strong. The girl points out that he is actually very kind because he took the time to listen to her. She catches him off guard by bluntly telling him that he is actually quite cute. Stunned, the boy can only repeat the word, cute, back to her in disbelief. She giggles, adding that the surprised look on his face is also really cute. The boy stares at her, overwhelmed by the realization of how unique she truly is. Sitting together in the quiet room, they share the cookies his nurse had baked. He notes her delicate nature as she is only able to finish half of a single cookie. Despite her small appetite, her dazzling smile shows she is delighted by the treat. The boy watches her, feeling a deep sense of connection forming between them. A silent promise lingers in the air as their time together draws to a close. The girl's eyes sparkle with warmth and a hint of a lingering secret. Determined to see her again, the boy vows to have his nurse bake even more cookies for their next meeting. With a tearful, radiant smile, the young lady bids a final farewell as Maynard looks on in bittersweet silence. The heavy weight of time settles in as the narrator reveals she was never seen again after that fateful parting. 12 years later, a matured Maynard sits in his study, sighing in deep despair as he wonders where his destined one has gone. A maid abruptly interrupts his melancholy, calling out to young Master Maynard and pulling him back to the duties of the present. Nanny Constance offers a warm smile of encouragement, urging Lord Maynard not to despair in his long search for the lace angel. Desperation clouds Maynard's face as he looks away, questioning whether his hope is misplaced. Grasping his hands, Constance insists the girl was real while Maynard laments that 10 years of searching has yielded nothing but the fear she was merely a dream. Constance reminisces about seeing the two of them together in the music room, describing them as two adorable angels. Shocked by this revelation, Maynard realizes for the first time that his nanny had been a witness to their secret meeting all those years ago. Laughing sheepishly, Constance admits she kept quiet because she had been peeking without permission despite lecturing him on manners. Maynard playfully reminds her of the times she used to smack his backside for his mischievous behavior, like the dangerous tree climbing of his youth. Gazing at the now-grown man, Constance marvels at how the troublesome child transformed into a breathtaking duke with glossy black hair and a supple frame. The nanny reassures Lord Maynard that everything will work out, certain that his lace angel would fall in love with him at first sight today. A confident smile plays on Maynard's lips as he decides to put his faith in her heartwarming prediction. Alone in the music room, Maynard crochets in silence while reflecting on how 12 years of constant rumination have begun to wear on his memory. He struggles with the painful reality that even the most precious details of her presence have started to grow hazy over time. Regret weighs heavily on him as he remembers being too blissfully lightheaded in that past moment to even ask for her name. He explains how he spent years searching for girls based on hair and eye color, only to find others who merely shared those physical traits. Maynard acknowledges the social barrier of his status, noting that many nobles avoid involving their daughters with an illegitimate son like himself. The Duke hardens his resolve, swearing that he will never give up despite the many obstacles in his path. As the bells toll, he declares with absolute certainty that the lace angel is his destined bride and he will find her to marry her. The scene shifts to the sprawling and majestic royal capital, bathed in the glow of a starlit evening. A younger version of Maynard, Adonis, speaks with his sister in a quiet moment of reflection. Looking through a window, Adonis expresses deep gratitude to his sister for carrying the family burdens and making countless sacrifices in his place. He vows that from this moment forward, he will dedicate himself to helping her find her own happiness. With burning determination, the young man pledges to give everything he has to repay her kindness. Gently touching his face, his sister Serafina insists she never viewed her efforts as a sacrifice, but simply as a duty she had to perform for him. Tears well in Adonis's eyes as he looks at his sister, moved by her selfless and unwavering love. Serafina ponders her sudden lack of work, wondering how to spend her time now that her primary duties have been fulfilled. Adonis suggests she take a well-deserved vacation in the capital to unwind and reward herself for years of toil. The siblings decide to step back into society by accepting one of the many evening party invitations that arrived during their break. As they arrive, Serafina is momentarily taken aback by the dazzling and vibrant lights of the capital at night. A servant at the grand estate welcomes them, identifying her as the prestigious daughter of Count Grosvenor. The doors swing open as the staff directs the guests toward the main hall of the gala. Inside the opulent ballroom, the announcer prepares to introduce the high-profile arrival to the gathered crowd. The crowd parts as Lady Serafina makes her grand entrance, looking elegant and poised in her formal gown. Despite the beauty of the event, Serafina feels the emptiness of the social scene, noting that the smiles and conversations are filled with pretense. She reflects on the shallow nature of high society in the capital, finding it exactly as she expected it to be. Though she wishes she had stayed in her own lands, she admits she couldn't ignore Adonis's heartfelt desire for her to enjoy herself. The narrative flashes back to a rainy cemetery where a young Seraphina and Adonis mourn the parents they lost in a tragic carriage accident. Standing in the downpour, the children are devastated by the loss while onlookers comment on the terrible tragedy. A relative, Baron Lloyd, approaches the grieving children under the guise of offering his condolences. Seraphina thanks the man for traveling so far to attend the funeral, unaware of his true intentions. The Baron turns his attention to the young Adonis, coldly questioning if the boy is indeed the rightful heir to the family estate. Adonis nervously confirms he is only 5 or 6 years old as the Baron looms over him with a calculating gaze. A sinister and predatory smile spreads across Baron Lloyd's face as he eyes the vulnerable heir. The Baron tries to manipulate the situation, claiming a small child cannot manage an estate and demanding they hand the title over to him. Young Seraphina watches in silent shock as the threat to her brother's future becomes clear. Her instincts scream that handing over the earldom would leave them homeless and destitute on the streets. Gathering her courage, Seraphina politely thanks the Baron for his concern but firmly tells him there is no need to worry. She boldly declares that she will serve as the acting lord herself until her little brother is old enough to take his place. In that moment, she realizes she has no time to grieve, vowing to protect the home and legacy their parents watched over. Though she was only 15 and not yet an adult, she found an ally in their distant relative, Keith Dunbar. With the help of Dunbar and the family lawyer, Seraphina successfully drove the greedy Baron Lloyd away. In the present, Seraphina accepts a drink at the party, her mind still tethered to the past. She sips her wine, reflecting on the fact that the truly difficult struggle only began after the Baron was gone. The flashback shows her fighting off sleep every night to study piles of paperwork, determined to learn everything required to run a domain. Within 6 months, she masters the vast knowledge required to manage the domain, realizing that academic study alone is not enough. Skeptical observers question her position, doubting whether a young girl can truly handle the responsibilities of an acting lord. Her lack of experience running an estate becomes a point of concern for those around her, leading to immediate scrutiny. The air is thick with anxiety and distrust as she faces the difficult task of leading a people who do not yet believe in her. Negotiations only proceed smoothly when she invokes the name of Keith, Baron Dunbar, whose respected experience carries the weight she lacks. Realizing that governing a domain means moving the hearts of people, she acknowledges she cannot manage alone without trust or goodwill. Determined to stand on her own feet, she resolves to earn that trust and goodwill herself rather than relying on Keith's reputation. She adopts a mask of stoicism, vowing to hide her true feelings from everyone around her. No matter the sneers or crude jokes thrown her way, she refuses to let even an eyebrow twitch in response to the provocation. This unwavering cold resolve earns her a formidable new reputation as the Iron Count's daughter. Reflecting on the hardships a year after taking her brother's place, she remembers the long road of managing the estate in his stead. Over a decade of service, the snide remarks fade into gratitude as the common folk finally accept her as their legitimate acting lord. The protagonist reflects on his fleeting time as the acting lord, a role he has now relinquished. Passing the title to Adonis, he admits that even his sense of accomplishment felt borrowed from his younger brother. A gloved hand reaches for a cocktail glass as the social atmosphere of the gathering intensifies. Overwhelmed by the crowd and his own thoughts, the protagonist decides it is time to leave the event and go home. Reflecting on his past, he realizes that having the room to breathe has finally allowed memories of him to resurface. A somber realization takes hold as he feels there is nothing left for him in this high society world. The memory of his very first love begins to take shape, clear and poignant despite the passage of time. Born with a heart defect, the protagonist recalls staying in the capital specifically to seek treatment from a skilled specialist. Medicine and treatments become the centerpiece of his survival as he recalls the famous doctor who changed his life. Day by day, he grew stronger until the physical pain that once defined his existence finally vanished. Around the time of his recovery, the king invited the noble children staying in the capital to a grand social gathering. It was at that very event where he first laid eyes on the boy who would become so important to him. He vividly remembers an angelic figure with golden eyes, looking like a character pulled straight from a picture book. Despite his beautiful appearance, the boy's manner of speaking was notably arrogant and high and mighty. Shortly after they promised to meet again, tragedy struck when the protagonist's parents suddenly passed away. Years later, a fireplace blazes as the protagonist listens to the persistent rumors circulating about the boy from his past. Now the Duke of Bedford, The man has become the most sought-after bachelor in all of high society. Having officially inherited his title, the young duke has forced the nobles who once mocked his illegitimacy to change their tune. The protagonist finds the nobles' sudden shift in attitude mercenary and hopes the duke remains unbothered by their shallow nature. He fondly remembers the boy as someone with a sensitive heart who was remarkably straightforward. A sudden, suspicious conversation breaks his reverie as a man asks if a specific drug was successfully administered. A woman playfully corrects her father, insisting the substance is a love potion rather than a mere drug. The protagonist overhears this plot in shock, questioning the true nature of the love potion they mentioned. The substance is actually a mind-clouding sedative and aphrodisiac that causes dangerous side effects like heart palpitations and dizziness. Despite their doctor claiming it isn't very addictive, the woman and her father continue to whisper about their dark scheme. The protagonist identifies the conspirator as the Marquis of Northcliffe, a man with a notorious reputation. Desperate due to gambling debts, the Marquis intends to marry off his daughter, Anna Marina, to a wealthy target. The protagonist is disgusted by their plan to force a marriage through a drug-induced scandal, regardless of the victim's suffering. Torn between caution and morality, he wonders if he should intervene despite being taught how to handle such situations. He worries that some people in this world are ungrateful and might drag down the person trying to rescue them. He realizes he must determine if the victim is someone he can actually trust before he risks his own safety to help. Anna Marina mocks the duke's illegitimate status but admits his immense wealth and looks make him a prize worth claiming. While she once viewed his background as a deal-breaker, the sight of his handsome face has clearly changed her mind. The protagonist looks on as the identity of the targeted man is revealed through his unique and famous nickname. The conspirators reveal the duke is resting in a guest room nearby, with only 10 minutes left before the drug takes full effect. Anna Marina urges her father to act natural as they prepare to head back and finalize their trap. The protagonist stands in the shadows of the hallway, his heart racing as the clock begins to tick down. With only 10 minutes remaining, the urgency of the situation weighs heavily on the protagonist. He realizes the Marquis plans to wait until the duke is incapacitated to fabricate a scandal and force his hand. Inside the guest room, the young duke begins to groan in pain as the sedative starts to take hold of his body. A sense of panic fills the corridor as the protagonist prepares to make a move before it's too late. Desperate to prevent the disaster, the protagonist hurries toward the guest room with focused determination. A series of sharp knocks echo against the door as the protagonist arrives at the duke's location. Finding the correct room, he prepares to enter and face whatever state the duke is currently in. Inside, the duke's vision blurs and he feels a wave of nausea as the drug ravages his system. He pieces together that the wine handed to him by the girl was spiked, realizing he has been deliberately drugged. Frustrated with his own vulnerability, he regrets attending the party in search of a destined bride. Expecting the girl to arrive at any moment to finalize her scheme, he correctly guesses her predatory intentions. Struggling against the physical effects of the aphrodisiac, the duke realizes he must escape the room immediately. Another set of knocks startles him, and he fears his captors have already returned to claim their prize. Sweating and desperate, the duke curses his luck, believing the woman has arrived to trigger the scandal. The door begins to creak open as the intruder decides not to wait for a response. The protagonist announces that this is an emergency and enters the room despite the lack of an invitation. The duke looks up in a daze, his senses overwhelmed as a figure finally steps into the light. The protagonist confirms his suspicions upon seeing the duke's condition, noting that he has clearly been drugged. He urges the duke to leave immediately before the Marquis and his daughter return to catch them together. Though the duke's vision is fuzzy, he is struck by the protagonist's poised and steady voice. To his confusion, the duke feels his heart pounding in a way he hasn't felt since meeting his lace angel years ago. The protagonist shuts down any further thought, insisting they focus entirely on escaping the immediate crisis. As the duke struggles to remain conscious, the protagonist prepares to support his weight and move him. Realizing the duke is about to collapse, the protagonist decides their best option is to hide in the adjoining room. The two figures vanish into the shadows of the suite just as the primary hallway falls silent. The grand clock in the hall strikes the hour, signaling that the 10 minutes are officially up. Anna Marina and her father confidently head toward the guest room, believing their trap is perfectly set. With a predatory smile, the girl anticipates finding the incapacitated duke exactly where she left him. The scene opens in a lavishly decorated drawing room featuring elegant Victorian furniture and large arched windows. A frantic woman and an older man realize their target has vanished, desperately hoping the potion he drank prevents him from getting far. Sweat beads on the woman's face as she looks around in a panic, wondering where on earth the man could have disappeared to. A hidden figure watches from behind the heavy curtains as the woman's dress brushes past his place of concealment. The man struggles to breathe in the darkness, mentally apologizing for the situation as he fights the effects of the drug. A different woman watches over the suffering man with concern, noticing he is clearly in immense physical pain. Determined to help him breathe, she reaches out to gently loosen his restrictive clothing. As she opens his shirt, the man's chest is revealed, glistening with sweat from the intensity of the potion. The woman stares in stunned silence, her face flushing with heat at the intimate and unexpected sight. The man groans about his pounding headache while the woman wishes she had something more effective to ease his suffering. She offers him water, explaining that hydration is the only way to quickly flush the drug out of his system. Suddenly, the man's grace collapses forward, causing the woman to cry out in shock as the water cup is knocked over. The ornate double doors of the room are suddenly thrown open, flooding the space with light. The scheming woman and her companion reappear with triumphant, sinister smirks on their faces. "There he is," she cries out, pointing directly at the Duke of Bedford in his compromised state. A single rose lies discarded on the floor, symbolizing the fallen honor and the trap that has just been sprung. The Duke and the lady are discovered lying together on the floor amidst scattered flowers, a scene perfectly staged for scandal. The lady screams in horror as the realization of their situation hits her like a physical blow. The surrounding crowd of nobles reacts with gasps and whispers, their faces filled with shock and judgment. The Duke is confronted by an angry noble demanding to know what he is doing and who the woman with him is. Gossip spreads instantly among the party guests, with ladies eagerly confirming the scandalous details they just witnessed. The rumors solidify that the Duke of Bedford was caught with Count Grosvenor's daughter in a highly improper setting. The scandal grows as society reels at the news of the pair being found embracing alone in a locked room. The Duke clutches his head in despair, unable to believe how such a disastrous turn of events could occur. He is haunted by the shame of being the one to stain a lady's honor, his body shaking with regret. Furious, he realizes things would never have ended this way if those fools hadn't drugged him at the ball. The rumor spreads through high society like wildfire, fueled by Anna Marina's calculated scream that alerted every guest. The strict rules of society dictate that a maiden's chastity is paramount and meetings between men and women must always be chaperoned. Because they were found alone, the woman is now branded as wanton and her hopes for a proper marriage are shattered. The Duke resolves that there is only one way to protect her honor. He must take her as his wife. He investigates his savior, Serafina, who became the formidable acting head of her house after her father's sudden death. While he respects her talent, he admits that for the sake of her family's honor, her personality matters little to him. The true problem weighing on his heart is that this woman is not his beloved lace angel. Since he was 15, he has dreamt only of being joined with the mysterious girl who captured his heart years ago. Despite his personal desires, he cannot simply ignore the honor of the woman who tried to save him. He refuses to treat Serafina lightly, acknowledging her as his benefactor despite his conflicting emotions. Tossing and turning, he realizes he needs a much better plan than a forced, loveless marriage. After 12 years of waiting for his dream, he curses the fact that he may have to marry someone not of his choosing. He desperately searches for a way to spare her reputation while avoiding the marriage altogether. A servant interrupts his rest to announce that a visitor has arrived to see him. To his surprise, the visitor is none other than the Grosvenor Count's daughter herself. The Duke immediately commands the servant to show her into the room. Serafina enters looking delicate and somber, reminding the Duke of how she supported him during the accident. He observes that she looks remarkably young, hardly appearing like a woman of 26 years. The Duke is struck by her appearance. Light brown hair that shines golden and eyes of a striking green. He tries to stay grounded, noting that many women share those colors and most only merely resemble his lost angel. Serafina offers a polite greeting, thanking the Duke for receiving her on such short notice. He can't help but notice that she possesses the exact same colors as his lace angel, stirring old memories. The Duke offers her a seat, insisting that he is the one who should be thanking her for saving his life. He repeats his gratitude for her actions the previous night, his voice filled with sincere appreciation. Serafina sighs with visible relief, her hand over her heart as she expresses how glad she is to see him well. She asks about his health, and he assures her he is much better thanks to her timely intervention. The Duke watches her closely, realizing she was truly worried about him and feeling guilty for not contacting her sooner. He turns the question back to her, noting with concern that she looks terribly pale. She apologizes for her appearance, explaining that her complexion suffers immediately when she lacks sleep. She confesses she couldn't sleep because she was busy working out a plan to overcome their shared predicament. She confirms that the accident was not his intention either, seeking common ground in their misfortune. As they stand together, the Duke reflects on how the rumor works against them both, yet he feels a strange, unidentifiable emotion. A wave of inner turmoil strikes as the protagonist's chest tightens upon hearing her deny wanting what is offered. Determined to shatter the stalemate, a new strategy is proposed to finally break through the current situation. With a knowing and mysterious smile, the plan begins to take shape as the possibility of a new way is questioned. The bold suggestion is made to seek royal intervention by asking Her Majesty the Dowager Queen to intercede on their behalf. The Dowager Queen Mary Elizabeth Lawrence, grandmother to the narrator and mother of King Richard II, sits upon her throne holding absolute influence over the absolute truths of society. If she publicly declares that nothing improper occurred, the damaging rumors surrounding the pair will instantly vanish. Banking on the fact that the Dowager Queen has doted on him since childhood, the narrator feels confident she will provide the help they desperately need. A heavy atmosphere sets the stage for a critical realization. Maynard is taken aback by a brilliant idea, praising the person's genius as the conversation takes an unexpected turn. His heart flutters uncontrollably as Serafina humbles herself against his praise. He tries to rationalize his feelings by comparing her looks to the lace angel, but admits Serafina lacks that girl's blooming, expressive smile. Despite what his mind tells him, a deeper instinct begins to take hold. The internal conflict intensifies as Maynard finds himself unable to pull his gaze away from her. The two sit in a tense, formal silence within a grand, sunlit parlor. Maynard continues to deny the growing attraction, firmly telling himself no as he struggles with his composure. Both characters look visibly shaken and sweating, trapped in an awkward and heavy silence. An overhead view reveals the Dowager Queen fanning herself while Maynard and Serafina sit stiffly across from her. Maynard attempts to protest to his grandmother, but he is clearly flustered and struggling to find the right words. He argues that he hasn't dishonored Serafina, explaining that she merely nursed him after he was drugged by Northcliffe. The Dowager Queen slams her fan down with an emphatic "exactly" to cut off his excuses. She mocks the situation, suggesting that a lady devotedly caring for a drugged man is the perfect setup for a romance. Exasperated by his dense nature, the Queen calls him a blockhead, while Maynard can only mutter in confusion. She berates him for reaching his age without a single romantic rumor, fearing he will grow old alone. Maynard and Serafina can only sit in stunned silence as the Queen's lecture continues. The Queen demands to know what his problem is while Maynard tries unsuccessfully to interject. She praises Serafina as an admirable woman who built a premier wine business and protected her family's lands. Maynard realizes with a sinking feeling that the situation has taken a very bad turn. The reality sets in that his grandmother has taken a permanent liking to Serafina. The Queen continues to gush over Serafina's adorable nature, leaving Maynard feeling cornered. She leans in to admire Serafina's peridot green eyes, leaving the young woman completely startled. Maynard intervenes, pleading with his grandmother to control herself because she is terrifying their guest. The Queen ignores his plea, commanding Maynard to marry the lady. Maynard remains in a state of shock, his face reflecting a mix of disbelief and resignation. The Dowager Queen declares that she has decided his fate right then and there. She issues a final, stern command. He is to marry Lady Serafina. A carriage sits outside the estate, symbolizing the inevitable path forward. Maynard lets out a pained groan as he grapples with the weight of the royal decree. Recognizing that his grandmother never breaks her word, Maynard realizes he has no choice but to proceed. Serafina looks down in sad resignation, acknowledging that no one can defy the Dowager Queen's command. Taking charge of the situation, Maynard proposes that they enter into a formal contract. Serafina is caught off guard by the suggestion of a contract marriage. Maynard drops a bombshell, confessing that he already has someone he loves. Serafina questions why he doesn't marry his love instead, to which he cryptically cites circumstances. The mention of his true love hangs heavily in the air between them. Serafina asks if a day will ever come when he can be with the one he loves. Maynard vows with absolute certainty that he will marry his true love without fail someday. The carriage wheels churn as Maynard admits that he and Serafina share neither love nor mutual trust. The journey continues under a cloud of uncertainty and lack of faith in one another. He promises a fair division of assets and vows not to touch her, even agreeing to a divorce if she finds love elsewhere. Maynard reflects on the drugged incident, seeking a way to protect both Serafina and his own heart. He concludes that a contract marriage is the only answer to protect his benefactor and his feelings for the lace angel. He admits his proposition is selfish, though the terms are logically reasonable given their plight. Maynard makes a cold declaration. He will marry her, but he will never love her. He wonders internally if Serafina will be angry or deeply hurt by his blunt terms. To his surprise, Serafina finds the arrangement wonderfully logical and agrees to the terms. She moves quickly to discuss the fine details of the contract, catching him off guard with her pragmatism. Seeing her bright smile, Maynard is reminded once again of the lace angel's blooming expression. He begins to doubt himself, wondering if Serafina could actually be the mysterious girl whose face has faded from his memory. They discuss defining infidelity and improper behavior, noting how subjective such terms can be. The weight of the impending arrangement settles over them in a quiet moment. Maynard decides to put everything on paper at home, dismissing the idea that she could be his angel, since she agreed so happily. The two stand together, bound by a cold agreement rather than warmth. He tries to shake off his suspicions, convincing himself it is all just his imagination. The Dowager Queen sets the wedding for 3 months away, marking the height of the social season. Preparation for noble weddings is a grueling year-long process governed by countless intricate rules. Sharp shears carefully prune delicate blossoms as preparations for the upcoming ceremony begin. The past few months have been an insane whirlwind of activity, yet grandmother seems to be intentionally stalling the pace. A sudden, startled, "Kaya!" rings out as a shirtless man is discovered tending to the estate gardens. The man casually reminds the startled onlooker that proper greetings should be delivered while looking someone in the eye. Serafina stands frozen as she comes face to face with the Duke in his state of undress. The Duke apologizes for his appearance, explaining he grew hot while hauling compost and tending to the myrtle for the bridal bouquet. Realizing the awkwardness, he suggests heading back inside since he currently has nothing else to wear. The Duke of Grosvenor offers a humble apology for his improper attire before offering to escort Serafina back to the house. Visibly shaken and blushing, Serafina struggles to find her words in the face of the Duke's overwhelming physical presence. She eventually composes herself enough to accept his offer, following him as they leave the area together. Noticing her trembling hand, the Duke wonders if the legendary Iron Count's daughter is actually flustered by his nakedness. He finds her reaction quite adorable, musing that her usual stoic calm might just be a carefully maintained mask. The Duke reflects on the heavy burden she has carried since age 15, acting as lord in her younger brother's stead. A protective instinct stirs within him as he looks at her small hands that were forced to become strong just to survive. He scolds himself for his arrogance, remembering that he is the one who proposed their contract marriage in the first place. Serafina breaks the silence to announce she has urgent business to discuss regarding the terms of their contract. The Duke listens intently as he promises to do anything to ease the burden he has already placed upon her. Taking a deep breath, Serafina specifically points to article of their agreement as the subject of her revision. With a determined look, she states her desire to change the clause regarding their future marital relations. The contract's original text strictly forbids sexual relations between the husband and wife for the duration of the marriage. Serafina boldly requests to remove the words between husband and wife, leaving the Duke utterly speechless in the broad daylight. She clarifies her scandalous proposal with unwavering directness. She actually wants to have sexual relations with him. The Duke stares at her in stunned silence, his mind racing to process the sudden shift in their arrangement. Serafina explains that she sees no benefit in remaining pure, as she expects no further marriage offers at her age. The Duke counters that physical intimacy is an act reserved for people who truly love each other, not just spouses. Undaunted, Serafina argues that if it is an act only for a husband, then she wants to experience it while she has one. The Duke feels a sense of obligation to Serafina as her husband, even as he worries about his feelings for the lace angel. He agrees to give her request serious thought and promises to provide a final answer by the day of their wedding. Serafina bows gracefully, expressing that she looks forward to receiving a favorable answer from him. As she walks away, the Duke realizes that if he agrees, he will have to touch her, and the thought begins to consume him. His gaze lingers on her features, specifically noting the beauty of her long lashes and her smooth, white skin. He finds himself wondering how it would feel to touch her, a thought that catches him completely off guard. Shocked by his own train of thought, he realizes he has never even considered touching the lace angel's skin this way. Serafina shifts the topic to a garden party invitation from the Duke of Curzon, asking if he will attend with her. Still dazed, the Duke tells her he will leave the decision entirely up to her. The scene shifts to the grand estate hosting the Duke of Curzon's lavish garden party. Dressed in formal attire, the Duke confirms his attendance as Serafina expresses her excitement for the event. The two prepare to make their first official public appearance together as an engaged couple. Serafina asks for a drink to soothe her dry throat, and the Duke immediately offers to go fetch them. He specifically asks if she would like lemonade, prompting a surprised but grateful yes from Serafina. She wonders how he knew her preference, touched by the fact that he pays such close attention to her needs. Serafina muses on what a kind and strange man her fiancé truly is. Though he seemed self-centered enough to demand a contract marriage, she sees that he is also gentle and caring. She admits it would be easier if he were the type to neglect her, given her own secret purposes for this union. A group of noblewomen suddenly approaches Serafina while the Duke is away getting drinks. They greet Lady Grosvenor with artificial politeness, masking their true judgmental intentions. Serafina immediately recognizes their faces, preparing herself for the inevitable social sparring. She identifies them as Lady Daisy of House Randall and Lady Margaret of House Aumon, returning their greeting with poise. The ladies act surprised that she remembered their names, but Serafina sees right through their attempt to pick on her. She knows they view her as a pitiful country woman who missed her chance to marry while running her estate like a man. Serafina calmly explains that she simply finds it proper to know everyone listed in the Almanac of Nobility. The noblewomen are stunned, questioning if it's even possible to memorize such a massive book of names and portraits. They nervously laugh and claim it's only natural to have the entire almanac memorized, trying to save face. Lady Michelle takes a backhanded jab, calling Serafina quite clever for someone who works like a man. The insults escalate as they gossip about her lack of a proper social debut and the scandalous method she used to catch a duke. Serafina internally notes the childish behavior of these young ladies, remaining outwardly unbothered. She decides it is best to simply laugh off their petty attempts to provoke her. Her lack of reaction infuriates them, leading Lady Michelle to demand if she is even listening to their insults. Lady Michelle calls her a coward who used indecent means to secure her marriage, frustrated by Serafina's cool composure. The verbal abuse peaks as Michelle screams that Serafina is just a dried-up country hag who is beneath them. She continues her tirade, claiming the only man a girl like Serafina could land is an illegitimate duke. The girls mock the duke's status, sneering that he only holds his title through the king's personal pity. Lady Michelle laughs that an illegitimate duke is actually lower in status than a commoner. Finally losing her patience, Serafina tells Lady Michelle she is being remarkably foolish as the other girls try to stop her. She questions just how impressive a count's daughter is supposed to be compared to the history of their houses. Michelle stammeringly tries to assert her status by mentioning her father, the Count of the Rondale lands. Serafina challenges her to prove how much she truly knows about the history of the noble lineage she is so proud of. She begins a lecture on the origins of House Rondale, dating back exactly 183 years. Serafina reveals the house was founded by a mere foot soldier, Leonard Drac, who was granted lordship for his bravery. She reminds them that all nobles were originally commoners and were only given roles to protect and guide the people. Serafina declares that wielding a title just to insult others is something they should be deeply ashamed of. She concludes by stating that illegitimate children bear no sin, as no child can choose the circumstances of their birth. Serafina delivers a chilling condemnation, declaring that those who abandon critical thought for convenient interpretations are nothing but fools. With a gaze of cold fury, she threatens to ruin anyone who dares to insult her fiancé by calling him an illegitimate duke ever again. Shaken and trembling, the antagonist Michelle stammers about the public shame Serafina has brought upon her. Consumed by rage, Michelle screams that she will never forgive Serafina and prepares to strike her. The Duke Maynard suddenly interposes himself between the two women, taking the forceful blow intended for his fiancée. Serafina cries out in horror at the sight of Maynard being struck as the surrounding crowd gasps at the violence. Michelle tries to backpedal, claiming she never intended to hit the Duke, while a worried Serafina checks the visible injury on Maynard's face. Maynard stands firm and cold, declaring the attack unforgivable because the intended target was his future wife. He vows that they will receive proper punishment for ganging up to hurl abuse and resorting to violence against his fiancée. Desperate and terrified, the noblewomen beg for mercy and plead with His Grace to reconsider his harsh judgment. Countess Rondale, Michelle's mother, intervenes with a dismissive air to de-escalate the situation. The Countess patronizingly suggests that these are just young girls, and the incident isn't worth the Duke's anger. She adds insult to injury by suggesting a scratch is a badge of honor for a man, regardless of his handsome face. Maynard stops a defensive Serafina, calmly stating that while the scratch doesn't bother him, his grandmother's reaction is a different matter. The Countess panics and begs him not to tattle to the Dowager Queen, realizing the childish mistake could have royal consequences. Maynard's tone turns lethal as he repeats the word tattle, offended by her trivialization of the assault. He looms over the Countess, demanding to know if she truly understands the status of the man she is addressing. The Duke reveals his leverage, mentioning Count Rondale's recent massive investment losses and the impending forfeiture of their title and land. The Countess is frozen in shock as she realizes her family's entire future is at the Duke's mercy. Maynard explains he was considering a loan out of pity, but the behavior of the Count's wife and daughter has forced him to reconsider. When the Countess offers a desperate, deep apology, Maynard pointedly asks exactly who she thinks she should be apologizing to. In a sudden outburst of frustration and fear, the Countess grabs her daughter Michelle, causing the girl to shriek in pain. The Countess harshly silences Michelle's complaints, demanding her cooperation in fixing the mess they've made. With fierce desperation, the mother orders her daughter to apologize to Serafina at once. Under the weight of the Duke's presence and her mother's hand, Michelle finally utters a tearful apology. Serafina surprisingly accepts the apology, leaving Maynard questioning why she would choose to forgive such treatment. Maynard looks skeptical and frustrated, unsure if Serafina is being too lenient with people who deserve ruin. He insists that these fools have done more than enough to warrant total destruction and doesn't believe forgiveness is necessary. Serafina softly explains that she doesn't actually want to destroy them, preferring a more peaceful resolution. Maynard relents to her wishes, telling the offenders to be grateful for his fiancée's immense generosity. He issues a final, stern warning to the surrounding socialites that he will not tolerate anyone belittling his future wife again. The Duke threatens to use the full might of House Bedford to wipe out the kin of anyone who repeats this offense. Serafina reflects on how she used to ignore rumors when they only affected her, but realizes that approach was reckless. She apologizes to Maynard for letting her temper get the better of her, though he finds her actions brilliant. In a moment of unexpected tenderness, Maynard leans in and plants a soft kiss on Serafina's cheek. Serafina is left stunned and speechless by the Duke's bold public display of affection. Maynard praises her skill and tells her how incredibly cool she looked while standing up for herself. Serafina frets that her behavior wasn't noble-like and that she meddled unnecessarily in public. Maynard dismisses her concerns, telling her that being herself is the only thing that matters to him. Serafina looks up at him, wondering if she is truly allowed to abandon the rigid expectations of nobility. The Duke reassures her that she didn't say a single thing wrong and that he is proud of her actions. He vows to stand by her and defend her against anyone who speaks ill of her for being genuine. Maynard tells her to forget about being noble-like and encourages her to hold her head high. He pulls her close, inviting Serafina to seek comfort in his embrace after the confrontation. Serafina reflects on a life where her true self was always left out of the equation. She recalls how she smothered her own identity for years, believing it was necessary to survive her illness and protect her brother. Maynard looks at her with admiration, seeing a woman who truly resembles an angel. He remembers her conviction that illegitimate children bear no sin, a belief that deeply moved him. Serafina's heart pounds wildly as she processes the depth of her growing feelings for the Duke. Maynard struggles with his internal logic, feeling that falling for Serafina might be disloyal to the lace angel he loved for 12 years. Despite his past, he admits to himself that he is starting to fall for Serafina so much that he can no longer ignore it. He views her as a striking and beautiful goddess of war who has captured his heart. Maynard asks her to stop the formal titles and just call him Maynard now that they are married. He expresses a deep, possessive desire to keep her by his side and never give her to anyone else. The Duke promises to hold and cherish Serafina with the utmost care. Serafina finally utters his name, Maynard, acknowledging their new bond. Maynard vows to do his best to make her love him enough to tear up their divorce-ready contract marriage. The scene shifts to a quiet window at night, overlooking a landscape filled with starlight. Serafina sits alone in her room, lost in deep thought and reflection as the moonlight spills in. Memories of childhood laughter and games float through her mind as she clutches her chest in pain. Tears stream down her face as she weeps, her body trembling with the weight of her hidden struggles. She prays to God for a strong body and a heart that won't break, offering anything in exchange. Serafina recalls her favorite childhood book about a sick girl who gains strength through good deeds. A sudden crisis occurs as someone screams to fetch a doctor immediately for the collapsing Serafina. Facing a harsh reality, Serafina whispers the lines from her book, hoping for the same miracle as she struggles to breathe. Serafina's heart remains shattered as she reflects on a past that feels like nothing more than a fading dream. Bedridden and frail, Serafina is attended to by her concerned servants within the quiet confines of her room. Clutching a book like a protective charm, she wonders if she will ever be healthy enough to see the young Duke again. To distract herself from the physical pain, she loses herself in childhood memories of her first love. Her fingers tremble as she flips through the pages of her cherished book, seeking solace in its familiar stories. Serafina sits alone on the terrace, the weight of her thoughts reflected in her somber gaze as she gazes at her book. Constance arrives with a warm smile, interrupting Serafina's solitude to serve a fresh pot of tea. Serafina admires the exquisite porcelain tea set, noting the beautiful blue pomegranate pattern adorning the cups. Constance reveals that the Duke personally searched for this specific set just to please her. The Duke reportedly scoured every pottery shop, determined to find teaware worthy of Serafina's grace. He eventually discovered this rare 100-year-old antique from the prestigious Milo kiln. Serafina is stunned into silence, realizing the teapot alone is valuable enough to purchase an entire mansion. Overwhelmed by the cost, she frets over why the Duke would spend so much on a gift just for her. Constance beams with joy, insisting that such a lavish gift is proof of the Duke's deep love for his wife. Serafina forces a happy smile, though she internally reminds herself that their union is merely a contract marriage. She politely expresses her gratitude to Constance while struggling with the idea that the Duke truly treats her well. Encouraged by Constance's enthusiasm, Serafina decides to try believing, even for a moment, that she is truly loved. Serafina notes that Constance, the Duke's former wet nurse, possesses a straightforward kindness that reminds her of Maynard. A gentle smile plays on Serafina's lips as she begins to soften her heart toward her husband. She observes that the Bedford estate is filled with warm-hearted people, much like the Duke himself. Serafina admits to herself that Maynard has truly become a wonderful and attentive husband. Despite his royal bearing, the servants adore him for his surprisingly gentle and considerate nature. Her thoughts drift back to the garden party, where Maynard's actions left a lasting impression on her. She recalls how he praised her actions in front of the high-ranking nobles, despite the scene it caused. She realizes that her former acquaintances, Adonis or Keith, would have surely scolded her for such behavior instead. Maynard's words echo in her mind, promising that he only needs her to be herself. Feeling a rare surge of happiness, she marvels at finding someone who finally accepts her exactly as she is. The reality of her situation hits her, and she sternly tells herself to stop falling for a man in a contract marriage. She reminds herself that she is only a temporary wife until Maynard can be with the woman he truly loves. Serafina resolves to keep her memories of their meeting 12 years ago a secret, believing he has surely forgotten. A wave of loneliness washes over her as she contemplates being forgotten by the one she cares for. Shaking off the sadness, she focuses on her personal goals, determined not to be a burden to a great noble like Maynard. She takes a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions while sitting alone on the terrace. Serafina is startled out of her thoughts as a voice suddenly calls out to her. Maynard appears with a bright smile, explaining that he has been searching everywhere for her. She greets him warmly, explaining that Constance suggested she spend some time in the sun. Maynard flusters her by casually remarking that she looks even more beautiful when bathed in the light. She shyly thanks him for the tea set, mentioning she heard he went to great lengths to buy it. Serafina wonders how he can say such bold things so easily as he notices her using the antique cup. Maynard beams with pride, stating that the moment he saw the set, he knew it was the perfect match for her. He enthusiastically describes the stunning blue luster of the Milo kiln, insisting only such quality is worthy of her. Serafina finds his puppy-like excitement adorable, noting how different he is despite being older than her. Maynard stops his lecture on teaware, clarifying that he actually came to the terrace for a different reason. He excitedly invites her to come see the lilies he has been personally growing, which have finally bloomed. Serafina is touched by the image, thinking that beautiful lilies suit a man as beautiful as Maynard perfectly. She smiles sincerely at him, expressing that she is truly looking forward to seeing his garden. Maynard gives her a dazzling, genuine smile that lights up his entire face. Watching him, Serafina wonders how he can smile so freely after everything he has endured. She reflects on his unfair past, having been forced to live in the shadows simply for being illegitimate. She remembers crying as a child over his plight, comparing his unfair life to her own struggles with a heart condition. Despite his hardships, she marvels that his smile remains bright and completely devoid of any shadows. She feels a pang of envy, wondering if the day will ever come when she can smile with such genuine radiance. She quickly dismisses the thought as if it were an impossible dream. Maynard leads her to the garden, announcing their arrival with a sense of triumph. The two stand before the blooming flowers, a moment of peace between them. Serafina is breathless at the sight, comparing the stunning display to a heaven's garden come to life. She immediately regrets the outburst, embarrassed for mixing up a children's picture book with reality. Blushing, she begs him to ignore what she said and please forget her childish comment. Maynard finds the phrase, heaven's garden, intriguing and gently encourages her to share more. He looks at her with genuine interest, asking if she will tell him the story behind the name. Serafina relents, explaining that it is from a cherished picture book she loved when she was a child. She describes the story of a kind girl who saves an angel in disguise and hears God's voice in her dreams. Maynard listens intently before asking if she would be willing to lend him the book sometime. He softly reflects on the story, imagining the girl's inner struggles and the pain she must have felt. Serafina is momentarily taken aback by his insight before softly agreeing to share the book with him. Maynard gently cups Serafina's face, concerned to see her in tears and asking what could possibly be wrong. Serafina quickly deflects his worry, claiming she only has a bit of dust in her eye while Maynard insists they go back to rinse it. She brushes off the concern, assuring him the tears have already washed the irritant away. Eager to share her passions, Serafina begs Maynard not to spoil the book's story before she reads it, later asking him to share his favorite scenes. Maynard agrees with a warm smile, noticing Serafina's sudden burst of happy excitement as she apologizes for her outburst. The moment lingers on the simple joy found in sharing the things one truly loves with another person. Maynard gazes at her with a silent, intense expression that betrays a deeper level of contemplation. Beneath her smile, Serafina reflects on the winery and the great fortune she built, claiming she has no regrets about her hard work. Her mind drifts to the heavy burdens of her past, including her parents' sudden deaths and the weight of running the estate alone. She recalls the suffocating Iron Count's daughter, mask she wore to hide her true self and avoid mockery. Looking back, she realizes her life was a suffocating existence dragged along by forces other than her own will. Serafina cherishes Maynard for making her feel free enough to finally breathe and embrace her love for simple things. Deeply in love, she secretly wishes to spend the rest of her life by his side, yet she knows this wish is destined to fail. The cold reality of her fate hangs heavy, as her future remains shadowed by a looming impossibility. The two sit in the quiet library, a vast space filled with books that contrasts with the intimate, heavy secret she carries. She remembers the devastating medical diagnosis. While pregnancy is possible, her weak heart would not survive childbirth. The warning was absolute, stating that giving birth would almost certainly cost her her life. Despite receiving cutting-edge treatment that made her body appear stronger by puberty, the fundamental flaw remained. Her heart remained physically broken, leading her to believe she could never truly have a family of her own. Everything changed when a sudden marriage proposal fell into her lap, reawakening desires she had long suppressed. Amidst the shadows, her singular, desperate wish crystallizes. She wants to have a child, just one. She fears that without a legacy, all traces of her constrained life and the person she truly was will simply disappear. Serafina finds comfort in the belief that if she dies in childbirth, Maynard is kind enough to cherish and love their child. She trusts his honest nature, knowing he would never neglect the child even if he eventually remarried. Haunted by guilt, she labels her plan to use his kindness to fulfill her dying wish as terribly selfish. She knows Maynard's gentle heart would stop her if he knew the truth, so she maintains her silence as they head inside. Her resolve hardens to leave behind tangible proof that a person called Serafina once existed in this world. Steeling herself, she commits to keeping her true goal hidden as she follows Maynard back into the house.